Max Verstappen has told people that he's not happy with the way his team is going, especially when it comes to choosing who gets to be the second driver. This isn't new for Max. He asked questions last year too when Perez was having trouble with the car, but the team blamed the driver instead of fixing the car problems. So now that the team decided not to listen to what Max thinks, can he change anything? And if he can't, does this mean their friendship might break? There's no question that Max Verstappen is unhappy with how his team has been doing things these past few months. And even though he hasn't been complaining out loud like you'd expect a four-time champion to do, things are different now because of this latest driver change. Liam Lawson had the shortest time ever as a Red Bull driver, and this really bothers the Dutch driver. Max thinks the team isn't paying attention to what really matters, making a faster car. There's no doubt that very few drivers can drive the same way Max does, and Max knows this better than anyone, but the fact that he's upset about how the car performs shows that the team isn't looking at the right things. During an important meeting in Dubai, Verstappen shared his worries about switching Lawson too quickly. He thinks the team judged how good Lawson was based on just 2 racetracks he'd never driven on before. Plus, one of those weekends was a sprint format. Also, Lawson won't get a chance to drive at a track he knows really well, Suzuka, because he has lots of experience there from Super Formula racing. Even with all this, Red Bull decided not to listen to Max and went ahead with replacing Lawson with Tsunoda. This really bugs the 4-time world champion, and a news source called Telegraph reported about it. This news company is very close to Red Bull and to Verstappen too. In what they wrote about this situation, they said, "You can probably guess what Verstappen thinks about Red Bull's boss's decision to get rid of Lawson after only 2 races. To bring in Tsunoda, the person from Limburg, also doesn't agree with the team boss's choice to make changes so fast." And if we really think about it deeply, you'd understand why Max feels so frustrated. Max wants the front part of the car to be as responsive as possible, but he also understands the hard job that Red Bull has when it comes to building a car that works better for the second driver. A report from F1 Insider said that the Dutch driver is willing to give up a little bit of his own speed to help the second driver get as many points as possible. But what's important to mention is that the RB21 car is being built no matter what the driver wants. The car is what it is. And when the air experts are working in the wind tunnel to try and find more speed, they don't really care what the driver likes. It's all about numbers there. And while what the driver says is important, it's not like it's going to change the direction the engineers will take back at the factory. So even though Max is angry that the team isn't working on the car to get more performance out of it, his driving style is very special and is probably the main reason why the second seat is always going to be a huge problem for every other driver. Other problem is that the team doesn't give their drivers enough time to get used to the car. If you look at this from a bigger picture, you'd see that Lawson wasn't as ready as Antonelli was, because the Red Bull and the Racing Bulls cars couldn't be more different. This is something that Verstappen himself has said. And when talking about how Lawson would be faster with an easier car to understand, which is one of the Italian teams, Max said, "If you look at the difference between the 2 drivers and the other teams, they're all closer together. It also shows that our car is really hard to drive. I think if you put Liam in the Racing Bulls car, he will go faster. I really think so. That car is easier to drive than ours." I also noticed that when I talked to Liam last year, I didn't think the difference between him and Yuki Tsunoda was that big. Otherwise, the team wouldn't have chosen to put him in the Red Bull car either. What's hard to understand is why Red Bull started panicking so early in the season, not because of Lawson's results, but because of what they expected. They weren't prepared at all, knowing that he would have to drive a really hard car that only Max can somehow control. Also, Max isn't very happy with the car itself and said that at certain points there would need to be big improvements if they want to be anywhere close to the McLarens to fight the Woking team for race wins. We've seen many times that Max doesn't need the fastest car by far to win races, but on the other hand, his special driving style puts him in a very tough spot when trying to get the absolute most out of the RB21 car. Going deeper into this and explaining how it's going to affect building the car even more, someone said Max is quite picky about what he wants from a car to make it fast. And that is usually a very sharp front end of the car, very quick turning of course. What happens because of that is it will make the back of the car unstable, and that for a driver is really draining if you've got a loose back end on this car when going into corners. So that is where Max is really good. That is where he's able to live on the edge of disaster. We're definitely seeing a different version of Verstappen. He's a driver who is now becoming more and more ready to help the team go in the right direction. All of his suggestions in 2023 were ignored because the team was way better than everyone else, and the engineers didn't really think they could be caught up to in this time period. But once they started to see worse results, mainly with Perez, they immediately thought about replacing the driver with someone who can be close to Max's speed. Not for 1 second did the team think that changing how they developed the car was needed, which is what's hurting them the most right now. And this is exactly where Max's anger is coming from. The team doesn't listen to him when it's most important, and they're focused on all kinds of different drivers, trying out a car for the first time and expecting to find a miracle from Tsunoda, Lawson, or maybe even Things would have been very different if they brought a driver, like someone with way more experience who would definitely have fewer problems getting used to the car. This is what Bernie Collins has talked about when it comes to the politics of Red Bull with their drivers, especially focusing on how little time the team gave to Lawson to get ready for his Red Bull time. Going deeper into it and asking the big questions, Collins has compared the Austrian team with what Mercedes did. She said, "We've talked a lot about Kimi Antonelli and all the testing he's done in that Mercedes. If he was doing the same tests in the Williams or another Mercedes engine car, it wouldn't give him the same thing. We've talked about how the Red Bull is really tricky to drive. It's a very special car. It's not the same as the Racing Bulls car. What I'd like to know, what we should have asked Christian is why didn't Red Bull do a similar program like Mercedes did with Lawson or whoever's going to be in the second seat? Why wasn't he doing 6 test days last year in a 4-year-old Red Bull? It would have the same feel. There's no spending limit on that. He could have gotten into the car in a much stronger position than he is now. Of course, all of this puts a lot of pressure on Horner because in the end he's the one who's responsible for choosing drivers and for creating a team with 2 close competitive teammates like McLaren and Ferrari have. If he can't do this, then we're probably going to see people like Marco and Jos Verstappen putting pressure on the team that Christian isn't the right leader for what's coming next, which can get even worse with Max's situation too. The 4-time world champion has been constantly connected with other teams like Mercedes and Aston Martin, so maybe this is the situation he's been waiting to use to get what he wants. With all of this in mind, do you think that the situation at Red Bull could reach a point where Verstappen might threaten to leave if things don't go his way? And more importantly, will Horner be the one to face the consequences of not being able to find a good performing car for the second seat? Let us know in the comments below, and once you do that, make sure to click on the video that's appearing on your screen right now.